How'd you sleep? Still sleeping well. I just, it's just so much to consumption. The less I consume before bed, the better I sleep. And that includes water-based stuff. So I had some tea last night before bed, and I need to stop consumption, period, at least an hour and a half before bed. Because I'm still trying to drink, close to a gallon of water a day. I'm getting close to a gallon of water a day. And I try to get that done early in the day so I can pee it all out as much as I need to. So at night, there's nothing worse than waking up. I woke up at 4 because I had to pee. I wake up at 05 anyway. So it's like, come on, body, get it together. So yeah, other than that, good to go. I'm going to start with the mindfulness training first, and then get into the topic today: how to disempower 1/3 as the whole based realities joyfully. I'll talk a little bit about what a 1/3 is the whole, or 1/3 as the whole based realities are. And then I'll talk a little bit about how to disempower them joyfully. So we'll do the training first, and then we'll get to the discussion. So the first part of the training is always cueing comfort. What facilitates greater comfort in your body, in your emotions, in your thoughts? So that could be an external thing. It could be you need to be in a particular place. I know for a lot of PTSD sufferers, you need to have a clear line of sight to the door. You got to have your back covered, stuff like that. In your body, it could be a particular body part. So for me, it's always my legs. I've got to get my legs squared away in a comfortable fashion in order to be comfortable. So that's always what I'm looking for. So what cues you to be, 2 to 5% more comfortable? And it doesn't mean lounge. What's 2 to 5% more comfort in your world? Now we're going to go through 4 bells. The first bell is always bringing the mind into the present moment. If you're a warrior, that relates to situational awareness. The second bell is all about aligning the body, which is kind of like bone stacking or proper position or posture, drill and ceremony. Third bell is interaction. So the interaction with the moment is through breath. The breath is what we can do in the moment to create calmness and centeredness. You do this with the marksmanship. If you're in a firefight, or if you're on a range training, or if you're just shooting to hunt, or just anything, if you're tense and not using your breath to settle yourself down, you're going to miss the target. And then the fourth bell is all about bringing our best self to the moment. And so in the context of, this, how do you disempower an identity that's based off 1/3 of reality as the whole in a joyful way? It's hard. It's very hard to participate with a mindset that is convinced of its prominence. And so it's very hard to do that in a way that doesn't trigger conflict. It can trigger argument and it can trigger discussion, but conflict, where you move from engagement with the idea into the realm of insult and into the realm of, kind of being cruel, or moving out of discourse and into discord. So that's why we do this stuff. We do this stuff to be really, really good at volatile environments. And that's not easy. That's why we practice. So let's begin with first bell. Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. What do you notice with your eyes? If you are looking at me, my eyes are closed right away. But what I still notice with my eyes is how there's light to my front left. There's light to my mid right. There's shadow kind of in the middle, so I know where the lights are. So that's kind of engaging with the moment with my eyes. And now I can do sound. Sound, just notice where all the sounds are in your direct area. You can imagine yourself as sitting in the center of a clock, and you can put your sounds at 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 12 o'clock, etc. That just kind of gives you a situational awareness of what's going on around you. Touch, its temperature, maybe breeze. If a door opened, you would be able to notice certain aspects of maybe a breeze coming in or sounds. These are all things that are cueing you to the environment around you and helping you recognize, not just intellectually, but in the moment, that you're safe. Smell. If you already know you're safe, then you can use curiosity. Curiosity tames the mind every time. So with that, we'll move on to second bell. Body. Notice what's beneath you, what you're sitting on, laying on, whatever. It's called your ground. Okay, your ground is the thing that is always beneath you, or whatever is always beneath you. Something is always beneath you. And you wouldn't be on it, you wouldn't be resting on it if it wasn't stable. And you would kind of use the ability to move from an unstable ground to a more stable ground. So now that you have the kind of the intellectual idea of it, explore the experience of your ground. What's right beneath you? What does it feel like? What are the cushion under you feel like? What's the chair or the hardness under you feel like? Just noticing ground. The reason why you notice ground is because it's the first place you have to notice if you want to build anything. You wouldn't try to build a house on sand. You need something that's more constant, something that you can build off of, because what you want to build is your best. You want to build the best alignment you can build. And so the way to do that is by going through the alignment of the spine, starting at the pelvis. So again, just noticing the region of the pelvis and maybe shifting left, shifting right, seeing whatever the pelvis offers in terms of feedback, sensational feedback as to maybe you should shift a little bit forward, or it would be 2% more comfortable if you shifted to the right, or maybe it's perfect just the way it is, but the act of looking is the key piece. The key piece is attention. Putting your attention on each spot shows you over and over and over again your ability to control where to put your attention. And remember, attention is the master variable. The master variable on all things human is attention. So from there we go to the core. The core has got a lot, it's got societal implications, it's got physical implications, and it's got idea implications. There's so much going on at the core. So when you go to your core and you put your attention on your core, see if you can just kind of soften your core. See if you can just kind of relax your core, let everything that's in there kind of settle in its place, and just take a moment to notice your core as it is. And then move up. Heart space. So heart space includes shoulder blades and collarbones. Shoulder blades and collarbones influence kind of how your ribs are situated around your lungs and around your heart. So as you're moving and adjusting for 2% more comfort, you just check in on the shoulder blades. A lot of times the shoulder blades get trapped up and forward. And that's, for a lot of people, that's a default position. This feels normal. It's not. The shoulder blades back and down, the chest kind of expanded and open. That's where you want to be. You look at kids, look at young kids, and you'll notice the way their bodies are naturally aligned with their bellies long, shoulder blades back, their shoulders aren't rounded forward, they're standing up with length through the spine. Mimic that. come up through the spine, come up into the throat. Notice front of the throat, back of the throat, and you might be able to notice the inside of the throat. And if you do something like take a swallow, you can feel how the inside of the throat responds, and then you might be able to notice breath in the throat. Just where the feeling of up and down. And then if you get quiet enough and still enough, and I'm not a distraction, see if you can tell the temperature difference between your breath going in and your breath going out. Now go to the top of the head. The top of the head kind of establishes the top of the spine, top of the head, top of the spine. And now once you've got this aligned spine, take a breath. We're not focusing on the breath yet, but take a breath, and then as you exhale, let all your muscles just soften like I don't know what, just imagine like all the muscles from the top down kind of melting. So all the muscles of the face, the eyes, the cheeks, the jaw, the chin, all just kind of melting down. The shoulders melting down. It's alert and relaxed. You want a spine that's alert and relaxed. And alert is readiness. Relaxed is I'm not ready in any particular direction. The problem with being ready in a particular direction is that it limits all the potential for the other directions to be the optimal direction. So if you get fixated on any one particular way of doing things, you limit the ability to do lots and lots of things, and those lots and lots of things could include the perfect thing to do, but you missed it because you've been fixated on one particular way. We'll talk a little bit about that more in the third. But aligned and alert, move to bell 3. Bell 3's breath. So just take a breath, baseline breath. Don't change your breath. Just notice what your breath feels like now. Then max it out a couple times. Notice the biggest version of your breath. Now you might have noticed movement, the body moving when you took the biggest version of your breath. So what I want you to do is notice how your body moves when you breathe, but I want you to also notice how your body moves when you breathe based on how you think. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about your sides and your side ribs, and as you're thinking about your sides and your side ribs, I want you to imagine breathing from your side ribs and see if you can feel that region of your body move as you breathe. Now, same thing, but this time front to back. See if you can feel front to back move as you breathe. Up, down, up, down. Now, omnidirectional. See if you can get all 3 experiences to be part of the one breath. Now, sit in stillness for a minute. Come back to your baseline. Notice your baseline. Note if it feels any different after we did this kind of breathing exercise. And just sit with baseline for about a minute. So fourth bell, we're finishing up here by bringing the best versions of ourselves to the foreground. And so the best version of myself that I bring to the foreground is one of, just kind of clarity. I just want to begin by saying that my intention is always to be as clear and as useful as I can be. And I want to offer you ideas and things that are valuable outside of me and my telling them to you. Largely, I want you to see me as useful for a very small part of your life. The thing that's more useful is what you can come to recognize on your own. And even in the practices that we do, as you get better at this, pay less and less attention to me. I'm largely useless for you. I can provide a framework, but ultimately you don't want me to be any real value. What you want is your attention to be of value, in your own study of mindfulness to be of value. And the reason why you want that is because we have created for ourselves a society and a way of interacting with each other that continually emphasizes 1/3 of the whole as the whole reality. So I always say, imagine a deck of cards. So you have 52 cards in a deck. Imagine I gave you 17 of those cards, 1/3 of those cards, and said, this is the whole deck. Get really, really good at playing cards with these 17 cards. And you didn't know any better. You weren't aware of anything other than this 17 being the whole. And so you created a game that included some brilliant complexity, just unbelievable, like, wow, this is amazing. And so you got so good at these 17 cards that you really convinced yourself and others that this is the best and the most effective way to use cards, is these 17 cards. Now imagine I came back to you later and I said, look, I really think what you created with these 17 cards is amazing, but I got to tell you something. Those 17 cards are only 1/3 of the whole deck. There's actually 52 cards. And so I need you to adjust your games to the whole. Now imagine that person being like, no, I don't believe that those 52 cards are the whole. You can explain it all you want, but they're stuck on believing that this third, the third of the whole, is actually all of reality. There's no card games, even if there are card games that can be played with the whole, it's not really that important. What's important is this third. This third is the key. So that's what I mean by third as the whole based reality. And you can see this throughout history in different forms. So I would argue in the kind of old days, right, when religion really, really dominated, the mysteries of life really, really dominated. I would say that the mystery aspect of life, the divine or God or that kind of aspect of life, that really captured the entirety of people's thinking in, the earliest of times. So that was the whole, right? Divine, God is the whole. All of reality was based around that. And then it kind of evolved and we moved into a more physical kind of reality where the body and the use of the body, the use of bodies, power, violence, war, just really physical. I think for a while that was kind of a whole picture. And then I think now what we're kind of in, and what I experience often, is a intellectual realm. So the whole is intellect. And intellect can be used to break down the pieces of reality and explain the whole. And if you really want to be adept in the world, then the key thing to focus on is your intellect, understanding the ideas of things, the structure of things. And I would say that right now, a lot of the intellectuals, a lot of the people who are really smart, cutting edge of society, how we should behave, et cetera, are driven by their ideas. Now, the thing about an idea is an idea doesn't actually exist in the present moment. An idea exists in the mind. And the idea is based off the past, and it's a projection into the future. And so often what happens is that I'll interact with people who have an idea, and this idea is based on pretty solid evidence. You know, they'll say, well, this is the way it is. And they'll go to an extreme in describing the idea, which will support justification for behavior. Now, the behavior isn't actually the behavior that they're actually engaged in the moment. Their behavior is an explanation for why certain behaviors are acceptable and useful because of their value for an imagined future. It's tricky to think about this because what happens is you'll be in a conversation with someone, and that conversation will not actually be on a topic or engaged in the present moment. It will be on the fantasy of a future. And what will happen is that fantasy will dominate that person's sense of the entirety of reality. And any attempt to discredit the fantasy with other ideas will result in the reinforcement of the fantasy as the absolute. And so when people get so fixated on the fantasy as absolute, they become less and less present with their actual behavior. And because they become less and less present with their actual behavior, they become that much quicker, or it becomes that much faster or that much more likely that they will just, no matter what you say, just reinforce their own ideas. So what you've got to do is you've got to disempower these third as the whole base realities by switching up and moving the experience itself around. And the way to do that is joyfully. Because when you shift someone's kind of attention, if you say to someone, look, you're only interacting with a third, and the third that you're interacting with is a fantasy, and nobody knows what's going to happen. So what we've got to look at is we've got to look at the other two pieces of the puzzle. What do you mean the other two pieces? And so that you've got to capture their mind. You have to capture their idea awareness, okay? Because most of their attention is on the idea. You have to capture that attention with kind of different awareness. You've got to show them in a way that's not aggressive or triggering the other 2/3 of the deck. How you do that cannot be explained beforehand. That's the key. You cannot figure this out beforehand. The strategy itself is that there's a whole that's split into thirds: idea, experience, mystery. So if someone goes idea, you can go experience or mystery to kind of disempower idea. If you do it without joy, if you do it in a kind of a cynical or cruel kind of way, it'll trigger them. And you don't want to do that. What you want to do, and this is the only way to notice this, the only way this works is if you're present. I'll go back to the first page. This is what it means. If you have not linked yourself to true emptiness, you will never understand the art of peace. What that means is to be empty of all the thirds. You don't come in with one particular way of being. You come in empty. And what happens when you come in empty is that you can then see what third that person's usually engaging from. And once you recognize what third they're engaging from, you can, in a joyful way, it's got to be pleasant. It has to be kind of a fun kind of thing. It can't be aggressive or cruel, because when you get aggressive and cruel, you trigger people's survival stuff, and you don't want to do that. It's just not helpful, and it takes a while to down-regulate people, and it's just like, ugh. So you want to be joyful. Look, I hear you, like I totally do, and I can see where you're going with that idea. But the problem with that idea is it's based in fantasy, and if you're always in the fantasy, you're not actually in the present moment. And if you're not actually in the present moment, you're not actually engaging with people in a way that could potentially prevent the fantasy. You're essentially creating the fantasy before it even happens by making the fantasy so important in your way of thinking about things. See, that could be a problem. You say, "Oh, you're being this." No, I know. I mean, look, I'm not anybody special, but I do know the difference between a projection into the world and interacting with the present moment in an authentic way. You know about it too if you're a warrior. You know what marksmanship's all about. If you're thinking about the next shot you're going to take while you're taking the shot, then you're going to miss. You have to be fully focused on that shot. And you have to do that over and over and over again until the present moment becomes a default for you. You know this with marksmanship. A Navy SEAL goes through present moment awareness as a form of default. A private who's just learned how to shoot goes through present moment awareness as a step-by-step process. And as that process becomes more unified, and as that person becomes more aware, it becomes more streamlined. Well, that's the same thing here. You have to recognize that there is more to the human experience than the idea. There's more to the human experience than the mystery. There's more to the human experience than just what's bodily available. There's all of these things and the accumulation of those things. And the only way to interact with a third as the whole based reality is with joy. You've got to find that way to kind of see it. And it's so fun. It's so fun when you see where someone's moving and you shift it. They're going hard into idea and you bring up mystery. Or they're going hard into body and you bring up idea. Or they're going hard into body and you bring up mystery. It's so fun to kind of shift. And it's also pretty fun to watch people get kind of flummoxed. One of my favorite people in the world is a very, very idea-based person. And when we get into discussions, which is always a pleasure, I typically get him going in any particular way, and then I'll shift to another third. And he's better at it than he used to be. He used to be, "You can't do that." It's like, yes, you can. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to having a conversation with him tomorrow. Because we're going to be working on mindful marksmanship stuff. But anyway, I'll finish up with that, and we'll talk a little bit more. So again, I've said this before. We're moving into 55, and so what starts to happen as we move into the later stanzas is it really gets into kind of the nuts and bolts of what it means to be fully present inside of volatility, inside of conflict, inside of anything really. What does it take to practice the art of peace in actual steps? And so I'll start to hopefully bring that out for you as we move forward. So, all right, see you tomorrow.